Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, and sorry about that, but I'm going to explain that real quick. Winter hit us pretty hard here, and I don't have an insulated garage. So doing any work out in the garage pretty much involves a torpedo heater running constantly. So it's really hard to make videos that way, and I didn't really do that much the past month or so anyway, but this video is going to be about showing you what I did do and what the plan is next. Videos are going to be coming out more regularly now. We have one project we're working on, out including the truck, but there's a bug out in the driveway. We're taking the body off. And then I have barn finds coming up here pretty quick that we picked up. I'm not going to tell you what that is until we get it home, and I can show you cleaning it up and seeing if there's any chance of getting the motor running. It's been sitting since 1968, so we'll see what happens with that. But first, this garage is a pigsty, so I'm going to clean that up at least a little bit, and then we can go from there. Stay tuned. Okay, now the garage is picked up a little bit. I want to explain a few things, but I've figured out about the truck, where my plan is going to go with it. First off is brakes. I have these calipers for the front, and I have rotors on the front, but the brackets I have are an original Mustang 2 style slide bracket, which obviously won't work with those GM style calipers, and that's the wrong kind of bracket for that Heights spindle anyway. So what I'm going to do, Heights sells a bracket that'll adapt that spindle to these GM style calipers. So the fronts are going to be pretty easy. The rears, I have rotors that I had laying around, which happen to be the right thing, but I don't have anything else. So what I'm going to do is buy an entire kit and just roll that way. That way I'm not trying to piece together parts and pieces to make everything hopefully work. Just buy a kit for a 9-inch, a Ford 9-inch, and make it all work and not have to worry about it. It's also, that means I'm going to have to pull the axles back out and stuff, but that's no big deal. That'll make the rear pretty easy and straightforward. For the actual pedal and master cylinder setup, I was going to use this used chrome dual master cylinder with a proportioning valve already there, but this is leaking from the rear seal, so we need a rebuild, and I also really don't have a lot of room in the engine bay for a big booster and master cylinder. I'm sure it'd fit, but I wouldn't have room for anything else, and you would take up pretty much what's left of the engine bay. So what I decided to do is go manual brakes. This truck weighs pretty much nothing, so it's not going to be a huge deal, and I've driven plenty of cars with manual brakes and I'm used to it. As long as they're set up right and the bias is right, it works just fine. To accomplish that, what I'm going to do is get a Willwood dual single master cylinder pedal and master cylinder setup with a bias rod built into it, so I can adjust the brake bias front and rear with just that and not have to really mess with it that much. That way I'll have more room in the engine bay for other things like the horn and power steering pump, stuff like that. In the rear, I actually I braced up the rear step notch a bit. It was originally not intended to have the entire weight of the truck on it. It was just there for shocks, and I was going to run air ride air springs in the back with some shocks. But I didn't like that a setup was going to have to take to actually accomplish that. So I decided to just run QA1 coilovers in the rear and brace up that bar. Honestly, probably would have been fine, but it just makes me feel better. But I put gusset on each side and a bar leading down to the frame, but I'll show you that. The wiring had a fiasco with that. The cheap harness I bought off Amazon, trying to be cheap, turned out to have a fault in it. It had a short and was sending power to a bunch of random crap that shouldn't have had power. So that was causing all sorts of issues, me trying to diagnose issues. So what I did was pull the harness out of the Packard in the background over there. It only had tail lights ran, nothing else was ran, so I decided just to use that and buy something else for the Packard. You see, it's just a Haywire Pro T 7 fuse, which isn't as many fuses as I would wanted, but it's enough to run the truck. And for anything else, I added another little 7 fuse, just solitary fuse box that'll run anything else I want to run off that, like the signal flashers and stuff, turn signals. But everything besides I have to run wires to the rear, but I'm waiting to do that until I finish drilling all the holes and painting everything that I ground to put those bars in. And then the gauge cluster. It's the only 2 things left to wire. Everything else is ran. Just when I actually put the truck back together, then I can finish a few things. But I'll show you the rear I messed with first, and then I will show you progress on the wiring, and then I'll explain a few things, what should be next. Yeah. Grab this. Okay. I'll show you the bracing I did in the back real quick. You can see the bar going from the top of the shock mount, or the coilover mount, down to the frame at an angle to try to stop any flexing front and back. And I also added gussets right there on each side to try to stop it flexing up and down. This, like I said, this wasn't originally intended for all the weight of the truck, so a little bit of bracing just to make myself feel better. And I also finish welded the shock mount tops to the actual bar. Those bolts were in there for positioning, but I finish welded them and I haven't taken the bolts. I don't even see the reason to take them out. For the cross sill bolts, which are these guys, you can see the block. Yes, this truck body and cab mounts are wood with a little rubber pad, which is interesting. What I have to do is the top of the frame still has the holes originally for the cross sills, but since I boxed the frame, there's no way to get a wrench inside the frame to actually get those nuts tight. So I'm either going to have to drill a hole through the side of the frame or through the bottom to tighten those up. I have to do the same thing for the cab of the truck. They're just sitting on there to position everything. I obviously haven't taken care of that yet, but I have patch panels sourced for that, so that's no big deal. Let's see. I had to. I don't know if these guys were on there or not last time, but I spot welded the side rails for the bed, and I had to cut out a chunk obviously for the step notch. But that means I'm going to have to obviously cut all the wood and for the bed and all the little pieces that connect the wood together and make a box for the step notch, but that's all to come eventually. For the wiring, it's kind of hard to see, it's dark, but up above the actual heater core over there is the fuse boxes, the two of them that I mentioned, and a couple wires left dangling around, but ignition switch is dangling, but it's all wired up. The tack isn't wired up, but the turning signal switch is, and I still have to do the dash obviously, but I have it all ran. For the headlights and everything is all coming through here through an original grommet down. It's a couple clamps on the inner fender down to another grommet, and then obviously down to the dimmer switch. I have an alternator now. Since this engine has Vortec heads, a original bracket wasn't going to work for the alternator, so I had to get a billet adapter bracket. It seems to fit fine. Still have to get a water pump pulley, make sure it's all spaced out right, but should be alright. For the main power, I have a maxi fuse. Battery and alternator power are coming up to this side, and obviously power to the fuse box and into the cab is all going through there. Purple wire is the starter wire, but that's all run and seems to work. For the wiring going to the rear of the truck, I'm not going to do just yet until I get all the holes drilled in the frame for these cross sill bolts. But really, other than a few tinkering things and figuring stuff out, that's really all I've managed, which isn't much, which I haven't really bothered making videos yet. But since it's getting warm and actually can work in the garage and actually talk without having to freeze to death without the torpedo heater on, videos are going to be more regular from now on. Okay, that's going to be the video. All I wanted to do was kind of update you guys about what's been happening and give you a few details about what's coming up here pretty quick with the truck and a few other projects. Like I said, not much was accomplished, but now that it's warming up, I'm not going to have the torpedo heater blaring every second I'm out here to actually be able to do anything. and means I can actually make some more videos more regularly and make a bunch more progress on the truck. But if you guys enjoyed the video, appreciate you guys subscribing, commenting, all that good stuff. I know the video and audio quality is not the best. I'm hopefully going to be getting a different camera here pretty quick, kind of solve that issue, but bear with it, and I hope you guys stick around. Thanks. See you.